Arriba!
Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Pracharine, Nirviseshtu Shungavari Pracharya. Thank you all for coming. Nice to be here. Nice to see you all. And I've been put in the hot seat. He's going to ask questions. So let's go.
Firstly, thank you everyone for joining us today. It's really a pleasure to have this opportunity to speak with Mahatma here. We're so grateful to have you here talking about a topic that's so near and dear to all of our hearts, the topic of prayer. And hopefully through this chat we can shed some insights to the audience and give them something to taste of. I think a nice place to start would be, what does prayer actually mean at a foundational level?
Foundationally, prayer comes from a position of helplessness. That we want to achieve something, we need something, but we can't do it on our own. We need help. So whenever you're in a situation where you need to achieve something that on your own you can't achieve, you need to acquire something, alter a situation, you just feel in some way helpless, that's where prayer comes from. Because otherwise, why pray? Why pray? You can do it yourself. You don't need help. You know, it's like you don't pray to God to do the laundry. Please help me. Put the clothes in the machine. No, because that's simple. It's when you're confronted with what you feel basically helpless in achieving that you pray. And it's interesting also, because one of the prime qualities of someone who's evolved spiritually is they feel helpless. The more you advance spiritually, the more you feel helpless. And if you think about it, if you want to develop a relationship with God based on love, that's not easy. Because we love everything but God. And so to focus that love on Him, it goes against our conditioned nature. And so in order to do it, we need help. We need to pray to Him to help us. Because within our heart, there's so many things in our heart that are antagonistic to pure devotion. Lust, anger, greed, envy, just go down the list. We've conditioned ourselves over lifetimes to have this nature. And so not trying to approach God, and to approach Him properly, it has to be without lust, anger, greed, envy. And how difficult it is to overcome those, isn't it? Lust, anger, greed, envy, jealousy. It's very, very difficult. So when a devotee prays, his mood is, Krishna, I am not qualified to transcend or purify myself on this level of purity. It can only happen with your help. And I'm praying for you to help me. And it comes from a consciousness that I'm helpless in achieving something. That's where it comes from. Now, that's spiritual prayer. There's also material prayer, where I'm just asking for something material. It's similar but different in many ways. Because a lot of material things you could go out and you could achieve. You just have to work harder at them. You pray, someone's praying to God. Like if I were God, and I was on the altar, and someone was praying to me, please help me get good grades, I'd say, study more. Please help, God, please help me with my health. Change your diet, exercise, drink more water. So there's a lot of things you don't really need to pray for. They're like cop-outs. Like, you don't want to do the work you need to. Please help me find a job. Well, why don't you become qualified? Then you'll have people calling you up. Please work for us. So there's things that are in your hand that you shouldn't pray for because you can do them. That's not good, right? But there's things you can't do. And the only way you can do them is if He helps you.
That's so beautiful. The question that came up when I thought about what you were saying there is, obviously you mentioned that there may be different levels to prayer. Some people may pray for material things, like if I say I want a Ferrari, or if I want money, or so on. But how do we go about truly refining the mood we go into prayer with. How do you feel along with that?
Well, I think many of us are conditioned to approach God to help us materially. And obviously, if He's the supreme controller, He can do anything. And so it's kind of like a logical way of thinking. There's certain things I need that I have not been able to achieve through certain material things. So here I am now in the temple and God's on the altar. Well, He's the right person to ask. Right? Imagine, don't imagine you're God, but for the sake of just this thought experiment, imagine you're the deity on the altar. And people are coming and say, "Oh, my dear Lord, can you increase my bank balance? Oh, my dear Lord, can you give me the Ferrari? Oh, my dear Lord, can you give me that big house in this posh neighborhood," like that. And then someone comes and says, "Oh, my dear Lord, please help me love you. And what can I do to serve you?" Which one would attract your heart more? I think the answer is obvious, right? So I think it's important for us, when we're approaching God, to also understand how He sees our prayers. And He can give you all these material things, but at the end of the day, or we should say at the end of your life, they won't help you in your spiritual life. And sometimes, when you pray for something material and Krishna sees, well, this is not going to be good for your spiritual life, He's just going to say no. Even though you want it desperately. He's going to look at you and say, if I give you this, you will probably become more distant. You will distance yourself from me. Or it will create some obstacle. You'll become proud. I gave you this money, now you become proud. You're the richest man in the neighborhood. You'll mistreat people. I'm not saying that would happen necessarily, but if He sees that it could possibly happen, He says, no, why would I give it to you? It's not going to be good for you. But beyond that, if you study Bhagavad Gita and you see what Krishna wants from us, He wants love, He wants devotion, He wants a relationship. All of you who are parents know that if your children just ask you for things, can you give me this, can you give me that, and then you go away to college, and the only time they call you is when they need money. It's frustrating, isn't it? Anyone in that position? It's quite frustrating, because you start questioning, like, how much do they care about this relationship? Is it all about what, could you give this to me? Could you loan this to me? Could you help me with this? Of course, as parents, we want to do that. But sometimes it's frustrating. So it's the same with Krishna, because if you study the nature of Krishna, his whole existence is to reciprocate exchanges of love, to give it and receive it. That's what He wants. So for those who are practicing genuine spiritual life, their prayer is not going to be for anything material. And also, it's also a matter of faith. If I believe in Krishna, then I have faith He'll take care of me, and I don't have to ask for it. I'm like, what if your child, like one of your mothers, your child comes home from school and says, is there going to be dinner tonight? You give them dinner every night for the last 20 years. And they said, I have a doubt, is there going to be dinner tonight? That would be pretty strange and a bit frustrating, wouldn't it? So Krishna feels the same way. Okay, Krishna, are you going to feed me? I have to ask you to feed me. I'm like, I just want to ask how I can love you with faith that I know you'll take care of me because I'm your devotee. So the Krishna appreciates that. But I think all of us have been conditioned, isn't it, to pray for, what do we pray for? Good education, health, wealth, and these things. And I think it's better to have faith that if I give myself to God, these things will be taken care of automatically. So when you pray for them, you're like showing Him you don't have faith. And you can hear so many stories from devotees of how Krishna gave them so many things that they needed and they didn't ask for it. And they didn't want to ask. They didn't want that relationship. But they had faith and Krishna took care of them. Is Krishna taking care of you, all of you?
Yes.
You all have enough to eat? You have a place to live? You have a car? Yeah. And you would have that without ever having to ask for it, without ever having to pray for it. You don't need to pray for these things. These things will come. And the more we give ourselves, the more He'll take care of us.
It's almost like prayer is like a form of genuine loving exchange with Krishna,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it's a way of showing love to Krishna as opposed to just asking, right?
Exactly, that's what it's for. It's part of the process of bhakti.
100%.
So it's one of the 9 processes. There are 9 processes of bhakti, it's one of them. So every process of bhakti is a way of manifesting love. And so prayer shouldn't be anything. Like if you chant Hare Krishna and your only goal is something material, then you're not chanting properly.
Just on that topic of chanting, in the Krishna consciousness movement, we obviously place a lot of emphasis on chanting the Maha Mantra. Some people say that the Maha Mantra is almost like the culmination of all prayers, it's at the pinnacle. So, in reality, if we're doing our sadhana and we're doing our japa with pure intent, what is the need to have heartfelt prayer and having a discussion with Krishna if we're doing our chanting?
Well, I mean, it's a good question because in one sense you could say there isn't. You can put all your prayer into your japa. But since prayer is one of the processes and all the great spiritual masters are praying, it's natural to manifest spontaneously from the heart. It's just going to help you more because, prayer is unlimited. You can pray for millions of things. So, like you say, prayer is really meant to come from the heart, and so chanting is meant to come from the heart. And sometimes we just want to say the prayer specifically. And sometimes the great devotees, when they pray, they kind of tell Krishna all their problems. And they ask for help with those problems, those things which are separating them from Krishna. And like they'll tell Krishna and say, look at Krishna, look at me, I'm envious. My next door neighbor is more successful, I don't like them. It made me envious. And that's part of the prayer, just to tell Krishna, please help me, I'm envious. I don't want to be. So it might be something specific that we want to focus on that we're going to pray for. I have a particular problem, a particular challenge in my life, a particular addiction. I can't control my anger, whatever it is, and I may not want to focus on that while I'm chanting. It may be inappropriate, but I need to focus on it and ask for help. Or sometimes we pray, Krishna, reveal the solution, or give me intelligence to be able to deal with this. Or I have a service I've been asked to do. Krishna, give me intelligence to do the service. When I was 20 years old, I was put in charge of the temple. That's like a bit young to run a temple, don't you think? And when I took over the temple, I had been a devotee officially, living in the temple I first took over the temple temporarily, and I'd only been a devotee maybe 8.5 months. And 3 months before that, I turned 20, so I was quite young. And no experience managing anything. A lot of experience with mismanaging my life, basically. I was a bit spaced out. And Prabhupada wrote me a letter, and he said something really interesting. He said, the way to manage this temple is you should think you have absolutely no qualification to do it. You don't. You can't do it. And all you can do is raise your hands and pray to Krishna and say, please give me the qualifications. So sometimes we're confronted with situations and we feel like, I don't know how to deal with this, isn't it? It could just be, a loss of a relative. It could be a loss of income. It could be a disease that's going to severely incapacitate you or a loved one. And you've never gone through a situation like this. Or it could be you're promoted in your job to a position you don't feel competent for. And Krishna help, I don't know how to do this. So prayer is often like that. It's in that moment in a specific situation where you feel totally incapable of dealing with the situation properly, that you have to raise your hands and ask Krishna for guidance. And it's interesting that Prabhupada was willing to allow young men and women like ourselves to run his temples. And the reason is he knew that if we were chanting well, if we were surrendered and we were following his instructions, Krishna would give us intelligence how to do these things. Otherwise, why would he put us in charge? It's like nobody, you didn't have to sign up for a position of temple president and show your MBA from the University of London or wherever, Harvard, I dropped out of university after 2 years to become a devotee, so I didn't have any credentials. People say, what did you learn in university? Well, I learned sex, drugs, and rock and roll pretty much. It was the 60s, that's what I learned. So what qualification did I have? So but Prabhupada had faith that Krishna would guide us and reveal to us what we needed to do. And these temples became successful with very incapable people, materially, externally incapable. You wouldn't invest in them. You wouldn't gamble on them being successful. Until you saw after a while how inspired they became through the process of bhakti and how Krishna was guiding them and giving them intelligence, then you would see, actually they, against all odds, at least from the material perspective, they became successful. And that was Krishna's intervention.
For sure. I think one thing you mentioned there is we often pray to Krishna when we're in a situation where we feel helpless.
Yes.
We often feel helpless in situations where there may be death, illness,
Right.
problems with well-being, and so on. The first part of my question is, how do we just simply surrender and have faith?
Mm-hmm.
And the second is, should we feel guilty for asking for help or to alleviate our problems during that time?
Let me answer the second part first. There is really, really interesting answer to this question in Srila Prabhupada's books in relation to the story of Gajendra. Gajendra had a fight with a crocodile, and Gajendra is an elephant. And the fight was in the water, so the elephant is not a water animal. And so the elephant couldn't win the fight. It was impossible because he was fighting a crocodile in the water. The crocodile had the advantage. So it's one of those fights where like nobody can win, and it was just going on. And who knows how long it was going on? Like a year or something? I think, It was like he couldn't win. So at that point he prayed to Krishna, Krishna, please help me. And so that's a prayer for something material. And Prabhupada commented on that. He said because generally we don't want to pray for something material from Krishna. He said, but in some situations you have no choice. It's either that or I die. Right? And then Prabhupada said something funny. He said, for grihastas, married men and women, they have to support their families. So if they have some financial problem, they may pray to Krishna, please help me, because I have to feed 4 mouths, or 3 mouths, or 10 mouths, or whatever, and pay my bills, pay my mortgage, pay my rent, pay my car loan off, etc. And so it's going to jeopardize a lot of people. So he said, there may be a concession for grihasta that because people are dependent on them, they may pray to Krishna, please help me with this situation. There's another situation, you may pray for something material, but it's to help your spiritual life. Let's say you have a job and you're working like 10 hours a day, plus you're traveling an hour each way. So basically you're gone from like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And you would like to do more service for Krishna, but you don't have any time. So you might pray to Krishna, please help me find a job where I can get off at 5 o'clock and start at 9. Because that will help your bhakti. More time in the morning for your sadhana and more time in the evening where you can do service. So, and your first question was, how do we deal with these very difficult situations on an emotional level? What was it?
How do we fully surrender and say?
How do we surrender to the situation? Because, so what he's asking is, the situation is exactly what you don't want. And how do you surrender to it, which means, how can I accept the reality of the situation? Because when something happens that is very traumatic in our lives, it's extremely difficult to accept, isn't it? It's like, why did this have to happen to me, and what did I do, and all of that goes with it. In my meditation on the topic of acceptance, one of the things I've come to understand is that this is like a foundational aspect of spiritual life. Because when we come to spiritual life, one of the things we're trying to grasp is that there is a supreme controller, and it's not us. It's not me, it's not you. There is Ekava Ishvara. There is one supreme controller, and it's not you and it's not me. And as you live life every day, you realize you're not the supreme controller, right? Isn't it funny? Whenever you're in a rush, the person in front of you always drives slow. Whenever you want to just cruise and take it easy, the person behind you drives fast. Whatever happens to you? Whenever you're late, you get all the red lights. So Krishna is trying to show us through daily life how much we're not in control. And that's very difficult to accept when we have these traumatic situations. But I think it's obvious that there are certain situations in which we can do absolutely nothing to control it. Like, a loved one dies, it already happened to you, there's nothing you can do. And so now the challenge is to be accepting of the situation, which is extremely difficult to accept, although there's no way not to accept it because it already happened. So it's kind of a paradox. Some people say, how do I accept this? And I say, how do you not accept it? It already happened. How could you not accept it? It's a reality. So what are you saying? I don't accept the reality? So it's really, sometimes it's just like a logical, it happened. And the sooner you accept it, the easier it is to deal with. And I think personally, this is one of the big spiritual challenges. I call myself spiritual. I chant Hare Krishna. Been chanting for 55 years. I call myself spiritual, and then there's some disaster in my life, and I freak out. Like, well, how spiritual is that? On a scale of 1 to 10, 0, pretty much, right? So that's why I say that acceptance is really the foundation of what spiritual practice is about. And so it's just something to meditate on. If we're on a spiritual path and we run into difficulties and we know we can't change anything, just ask ourselves, so are you going to accept this? Because you're not God. And you cannot control this. There's nothing you can do to control this. So how are you going to deal with this? All the verses of Bhagavad Gita that you've read, all the Maha mantras you chanted, like, what is the value of all that when a disaster comes in, you go crazy? I mean, of course, it's going to be difficult. Well, I'll tell you a story. This is beautiful. Would you like to hear a beautiful story? Raise your hand if you want to hear a beautiful story. This is so nice. I lived in Mauritius for a couple of years, and there was a man there named Mr. Ramlala. And he ran one of the main newspapers, and he met Srila Prabhupada, and he was an intellectual. And he kind of shot Prabhupada, and he said to Prabhupada, Arjuna is not a pure devotee. And Prabhupada said, why? Why do you say that? What are you talking about? He said, Arjuna is not a pure devotee because when his son was killed in a battlefield, he was lamenting. Arjuna's son was killed. He was like 16, right? Fought valiantly, and then he was surrounded, maybe unjustly, by warriors, adult warriors, and he's a teenager. Maybe unjustly. And so Prabhupada said, it is natural that if you lose your son, you're going to be upset, you're going to lament. But Arjuna didn't stop fighting. He went out the next day and fought. So it's like, okay, this is upsetting. I'm not saying when some disaster happens, you won't be upset. But there is this sense that it happened, I can't control it. And I'm not going to allow this to throw my life into chaos. So Arjuna was upset, but he still could fight. So I think that's really the challenge in life is how to traverse the difficulties, and at least have enough composure to not just get completely thrown off. And another thing I think is, when disaster comes, I think, what would Krishna say, seeing me melting down like butter and fire? Krishna might say something, you know all those teachings I gave you? It was for this moment. Like, that's, like, you don't realize it when everything's good. It's like, yeah, I'll tell you another story. I had a surgery last year. It's pretty heavy. And I was in so much pain and discomfort that I hit a threshold. I was like, I can't take this anymore. And then the icing on the cake was, there was fluid around my lungs, and they had to put tubes in my back to extract the fluid. So it's not fun to have tubes in your back. Anyone have tubes in their back before? It's like really painful. And so I was telling myself, you're not the body. Just transcend the body. You're not the body. Didn't work. Pain didn't go away. I was still focused on it. So sometimes you don't realize how Krishna conscious you're not until you're in a situation which really tests you. But my feeling is the saving grace in any difficulty we face in life is at least that we are in an advantageous situation because we have Krishna's instructions. If we choose to rely on them, then that's going to get us through. Someone dies, but they're not. We remind ourselves, they're not the body, they're spirit soul. We will miss them, but they're not dead. If they've done devotional service, they're in a better place. These are the kind of things that help us through. I am not the controller. This is some karmic reaction, whatever. There's Krishna saying, be more tolerant. Don't be so affected. So all these things can help us get through the difficult times. So I always feel that for us, we're so fortunate because when life hits an ordinary person, they don't have a plan. There's no way, they don't know how to deal with it because they don't have the knowledge. Life is difficult, isn't it? Look at the world today. It's like, just get up and go out, and you don't know what's going to happen to you. You just don't know. You go to the doctor, you don't know what he's going to say. I went to the doctor to get a checkup. They're like, you're going to the hospital today. Like, really? What happened? Your arteries, your heart are clogged. You could die at any moment. It's like, really? You mix me up with somebody else? Sure. Yeah. So isn't it like that? You just, get in a car, get in an accident. That wasn't your plan. So, but we're so fortunate because we have Krishna's teachings and we have the Maha Mantra. So we have a place to get shelter, to be able to deal with the difficulties. And I think that's like, we really need to appreciate that. And the more we appreciate it, the more we'll use it in those difficulties. So I'm not saying when those difficulties come, you won't be affected, but you'll know how to deal with it. You'll have the wound, but you'll know how to address the wound so you can tolerate it.
Amazing. As you said, sometimes it's easy to forget Krishna when we're in these difficult situations and we get thrown off and our mind goes into all different spaces, we go into panic and all of these things. But how do we set ourselves up for success now? So when we know difficulties are going to always come in our life, what do we do now to prepare ourselves best?
Oh, I have a story. This story, I think, is worth coming tonight. Just for the story. After I tell you, you can all leave. So there was a devotee who I knew, was probably like 10 years older than me. And I think it was about 30 years ago, or 25. She came down with cancer, and she went to India to die. So 25 years ago, I was 50. So 50's a little young to think about death, so it was not, maybe it was even 35. I know death was just something I didn't even relate to. And here she's dying, and she said something amazing. She said, it's not that difficult to leave your body. You just have to have tolerance. And then she said, therefore, listen to this, it's so beautiful. She said, therefore, in life, if you practice tolerance, then when you die, it's not going to be difficult. Wow. Wow. Let's reverse it. In life, if you don't practice tolerance, then that is going to probably, or could be, the most difficult thing to tolerate, and it's going to be really difficult. So, answer to your question, practice now. You know, get in the gym and get in shape so when the fight comes, you can deal with it. And I mean, basically, that's what we're doing in our spiritual life. We're really practicing so that when these difficulties come, we have the strength and the wherewithal to be able to deal with them. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about tolerance in so many ways. Tolerate heat. How's the heat, everyone? In case you don't know, this is kind of like April in Florida. It's like April, May. Yeah, April, May. Yeah. I came from Florida like 10 days ago. It's hotter there. So. But for you, this is really hot, isn't it? You're not used to it. So it's like, you're probably all complaining, right? Of course, we have AC in Florida, but you don't really need it most of the time. But, so Krishna says, tolerate heat, tolerate cold. You know, just don't worry, in a few months, you'll be complaining about the cold, right? Yes. Tolerate happiness. Wow, why would I tolerate happiness? Because if I don't tolerate happiness, I won't tolerate distress. Things are so great, I'm so happy, wow, I got the new job, this family, this got this. And then all of a sudden, something bad happens, and you ever seen that? You go too high this way, you crash this way. When everyone's like materially like really high like that, I think, uh-oh, it's not gonna last, it never does. How are they gonna deal with it when it comes down? It's like gambling, you know, oh, there's more, just wait. So Krishna in the Gita, in the second chapter, is describing all these dualities, heat, cold, happiness, distress, loss, gain, victory, defeats, success, and failure. And what is he saying? Be steady in both, which basically means tolerate. We have a t-shirt, I don't know if we have it here. Maybe we do. It's one of my favorites. I don't know if it's a big seller, but I printed this t-shirt because I thought if devotees wear this t-shirt and they go out in the world, people are going to say, what does that mean? And the t-shirt says, tolerate happiness. Like, who's ever written a book called Tolerate Happiness? It's like, how to find happiness, the secret to happiness. You know, where to find happiness, and we're saying tolerate it. You have it. There it is. That's for a big person. That looks like it's washed out.
Well, it's waiting for the next person to wear it.
Yeah, we'll give you a discount on that one. I think if you. That shirt was designed as a conversation piece because it's so interesting. So Krishna's when Krishna's saying, giving all these verses of duality, he's saying tolerate it, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to be stable materially or spiritually, because you'll always be pushed around. And so tolerance is one key ingredient of spiritual practice. And like this devotee said, if you learn to tolerate in this life, leaving your body is going to be doable. And as we all know, every day there are things to tolerate. Krishna has created this world. This world is kind of like a school of tolerance, isn't it? Especially if you live in a city, it's crowded, it's just like inconveniences, traffic, and prices keep going up. But there's like so much to tolerate. I don't know how Trump affects, what his policies are affecting you here. or your own politicians. But there's always something, right? Isn't it? You had, all these investments that were going up and up until some politician made a policy. Ooh, it crashed. So I think that's really important to meditate on. To tolerate. And one of the things, also one of the things we have to tolerate is our own minds. Because our minds can turn against us. Our minds can be our enemies, and sometimes our minds can abuse us. And we abuse ourselves. And there's a phenomenon called spiritual abuse, where people who have power over us, leaders, manipulate and take advantage of us. That's called spiritual abuse. But we do it to ourselves. We can abuse ourselves. So tolerance is extremely important. So, emotionally we may be disturbed, but tolerance can help us balance that. You want to hear a funny story? No? Yes?
Yeah.
Raise your hand, want to hear a story? If you don't raise your hand, leave at the back door. And you can come in after I finish the story. So there's a man, he's a teacher, he's like into self-development and philosophy, and so he's very observant when he goes out and seeing how people are interacting, and he learns a lot just from observing them. And he's shopping, and there's a young girl, maybe 2 years old, just having a temper tantrum in the store. And the mother is saying, "Jennifer, it's okay. Just calm down. You'll be all right. Don't get upset." And he's looking at this, and the kid's like, "Ah!" And she's so calm. And he was so impressed. He went up to her and he said, "I'm so impressed how you dealt with your daughter, Jennifer." And she said, "I'm Jennifer." Sometimes you have to talk to yourself. Yes? Okay.
So on the topic of tolerance, how do we just prevent things from just letting go and just letting things happen to us? Often in Western culture you hear, God likes those who try and go out and do things.
Yeah.
What's the balance here?
The balance is, it's like you have these verses in Bhagavad Gita, don't be attached to the results. That's easily misunderstood. If I'm doing something, I am attached to doing it well. I'm not attached to if I get fame from it, or whatever I get from it, that I'm not supposed to be attached to. But to say I'm not attached to how well it goes, that's not true. So we are attached to making things work in accordance with the way Krishna wants them to work, but sometimes it doesn't work, and that's when you're, okay, I guess you don't want it, Krishna, or I'm not the one to do it, whatever. Oftentimes, you know those situations where you're just paddling upstream, and it's like extremely difficult. So there's a story. You want to hear another story? It's a funny story. There was a church devotees wanted to get in Toronto, Canada. Beautiful, beautiful church. Beautiful neighborhood. It's very, you could walk from that church to downtown, and the downtown is very, very classy downtown. And so they told Prabhupada about the church. We didn't see it, but they told about the church. And they said, we've already figured out, the temple will be here, the ashram will be here, the kitchen here, prasadam room here, it's beautiful, this and that. And so Prabhupada said, how much is it? So this is 1975, so it was $500,000 in 1975. I don't know what that's worth today, like, what, 8 million maybe? Who knows? We're the financial people. Anybody know? What's your minimum wage here? What's it? Do you have a minimum wage? You have
Something like 10.
10, yeah. Okay, 10 pounds. I would guess the minimum wage in 75 would be like 2 pounds. probably something close. So anyway, it wasn't a cheap building. And so when he told Prabhupada, Prabhupada said, we don't want to buy anxiety. Like that's like we're just going to be always collecting money to pay for it. We don't want to buy anxiety. So sometimes there's situations where you have to let go of something because it's not going to be healthy for your spiritual life or just for the sanity of the temple. And so that's, but Prabhupada came back there to the temple. Excuse me. When he first heard about it, he wasn't in Toronto. And then he finally came to Toronto a few months later and he said, he just got in from the airport. He said, so, you're going to get that building? And the devotee president said, you want to see it, Prabhupada? He said, yes. So Prabhupada went and saw it. And so Prabhupada loved it. Any big, beautiful building that Prabhupada saw, he just loved. They could get it. And Prabhupada said, so we're going to get it? And the devotee said, no, Prabhupada, we don't want to buy anxiety. And Prabhupada said, there must be anxiety. Otherwise, it's simply sleeping and eating. So, it depends on the situation. Prabhupada changed his mind. So sometimes it's the right time to give up and sometimes it's not. And you'll have to use your intelligence to decide. But I wouldn't, it's like, sometimes Prabhupada wanted something so badly, his disciples would just like, they would not take no for an answer. Abhiram Prabhu, I don't know if you heard the interview with Abhiram Prabhu on Namras's podcast, but he had to get a passport and a visa for Prabhupada, both of which had expired. And he went to the passport office, and the lady said, well, where's your guru? And she said, he was in Calcutta. Prabhupada was in Delhi, I'm in Vrindavan, and Abhiram was in Calcutta. And he said, well, he's too sick to come. He says, I can't give you a visa. He's too sick to come to Calcutta. He's too sick to go to America. So it's like, oh no, Prabhupada, well, that's when Prabhupada came here in 77, in the summer. And so Abhiram went to a friend of his to get the visa and the passport. And this was like an administrator for the U.S. government, but all the U.S. government people were CIA agents or connected with the CIA in India. And basically he told this man, I have to get this passport no matter what. And if you don't give it to me, I will spill the beans. And so he knows. So he just went out on the edge. And this man became so upset with him, and they were friends, that he finally gave the passport and they got the visa. But so sometimes when the spiritual master desperately needs something for the disciple, there's no question of not doing it. You just do it no matter what. So you can't give up, you can't let it go. So that's there also. And then he got it, and that person said, never, I'll ever see your ugly face again. It was really bad. You can watch the podcast, it's quite an interesting story.
So when we're in those positions where we have to make a decision between just letting things happen or acting, what's the process for getting to that decision? How do we know what's the right thing to do?
Well, it depends on the individual, because maybe you could do something that I couldn't do, and if you go through it, you'll be okay, and if I go through it, I'll have a nervous breakdown. So there are those kinds of decisions of how this will affect me personally. And especially if I'm responsible for other people, if I fail, how would it affect them? These kinds of things. And I think some of us have a nature where we'll never give up no matter what. The whole world's falling down, we still don't give up. And that's good, but not good sometimes. And sometimes we just have to consult with people, with our friends and seniors to know. My basic parameter is if your effort is causing your spiritual life to slacken, then that's not good. So I think that's important. Because sometimes you can make an effort to achieve something, but it's actually undermining your spiritual life at the same time. Prabhupada often would, there's another, want to hear another story?
Yeah.
This is interesting, it's interesting. There was a program in the United States in the early 70s where they were traveling doing festivals. They called it the Road Show. And they were doing dramas, they were doing rock music, they were getting big audiences, they were giving lectures, traveling around the country, doing Harinams. And the devotees doing the drama, a lot of men and women were doing the drama, and it was kind of becoming unhealthy. They had one changing room for the men and the women together, and they're living together. And not living together, but they're just together all the time. And some devotees observed that it wasn't healthy, and they told Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, okay, forget the whole show. Because he saw it was jeopardizing their spiritual life. So, that's an example. There was another party, all brahmacharis, they had like 6 buses. They were traveling around America in the 70s, mid-70s, distributing books. Each bus had vans that would travel with it. And full of brahmacharis, they'd sleep on the bus. They would go to colleges, and the devotees would drive out in the vans and go in towns around there and distribute books. And the buses had deities, so it was a moving temple. But they would go from temple to temple and steal all the brahmacharis out of the temple. So the bus would come in, it's like, the bus would leave. It's like, where's Krishna Das? Where's Govinda Das? Where's Bhadra Rupra? Where's Bhadra Singh? It's like, they're on the bus, they're gone. So, I think it must have been 1976, the temple presidents went to Mayapur to complain to Prabhupada that this party is stealing all our men. But this party was distributing more books than anyone in the world. And Prabhupada, if you distributed Prabhupada's books, he said, you get so much mercy, and he was so happy. And Bhakti said, I'm going to give you 1,000 times more mercy than I can give. And he wanted it so much, and he stressed it over and over again, and they were distributing so many books. So Prabhupada brought the leader of the party, and he said, what's going on here? Everyone's complaining about here. And they're having this, I don't know, Prabhupada, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I should just go to China as an expression. Maybe I should go to Alaska, or wherever you would go in London. Maybe I should go to the North Pole. It's like an expression. The next day, Prabhupada called him in and said, Krishna has spoken through you. I want you to go to China. And he said, but Prabhupada, this whole book distribution party depends on me. If I go, finish. It's gone. And Prabhupada said, I take it away from you. Which is so interesting because it was so important to Prabhupada, but because it was hurting devotees, he stopped it. So you have these things, where if we're damaging devotees, we're damaging our spiritual life in the name of executing service, what's the point? So these are some examples. And this example is amazing because that was the biggest book distribution party. You just cut it off to save the temples, basically, and appease the temple presidents and so forth.
So I guess making that decision is often based in what's best for our spiritual life, what's best for our spiritual progress, and all of those things.
But there's another story. If you like contradictions, you're going to come out of this class completely confused. But I want to tell another story, because this is so beautiful. Would you like to hear another story? This is so beautiful. When I was in the hospital after the surgery, I don't know, the anesthesia or what, I was like emotional, I was crying, and everything I read, it was just like hitting me, like, ah. So, some of you may know this story, but during the communist times, Prabhupada had his mindset on preaching behind the Iron Curtain, the communist countries, but I'm not communist anymore. But you couldn't get in there, you have to sneak in and sneak books in and like that. So Prabhupada, that was like his dream, to preach in the communist countries. So he had a disciple who was sometimes going to Eastern Germany and knew something about it. This was before, I think it's maybe before he went to Russia, or maybe after, but there was basically very little preaching, if any, in the Eastern Bloc countries. And so he asked us where to go, and he said, Srila Prabhupada, how can we go? There's nothing to eat there. If we go there, we have to eat meat. Not cow, but other meat. And Prabhupada said, then eat meat. And then he said, but Prabhupada, what about my consciousness? And Prabhupada said, damn your consciousness. In other words, Prabhupada was like, this is so big, this is so pleasing to Krishna, let's just do it. This is like, so sometimes there are situations where it's like, damn your consciousness. It's like, there's billions of people here that need Krishna, and you're thinking about your consciousness. Obviously, if you're not Krishna conscious, you can't do anything. But it makes a point that there's some balance there. And when I was in the hospital in this like emotional state, when I knew this story, but I read it again, it was being read to me, and I thought, that is Srila Prabhupada. That is the essence of Srila Prabhupada. Damn your consciousness, save the world. It's not like, it was kind of like he's saying, well, what you like, you're going to let all these people suffer because you don't want to do this, make this sacrifice. But Prabhupada's point also is that Krishna will protect you if you do that. So even you had to eat meat. Wow, that's crazy, isn't it?
Wow, crazy. It's almost like the selfless sacrifice came at the forefront there.
Yeah, exactly. And then Krishna will protect you.
100%.
Yeah. So, it's not like you stop chanting your rounds and, well, I'm eating meat, might as well smoke cigarettes, have some coffee, whatever, it's not like that. But that is the consciousness that is the person who could spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. They had to have that consciousness. I don't think any Prabhupada's godbrothers would have said that, or very few. But Prabhupada is picking that up from Bhaktisiddhanta, because Bhaktisiddhanta said, go to England and open a hostel and serve them meat and have kirtan. And when Prabhupada was given sannyas, he told, I think, Narayan Maharaj or someone, he said, I want to go to the West and open a hostel, and we'll serve meat, and we'll get them to do kirtan, and they'll give it to me. So he was willing to do that. And we heard stories when they were building temples, Bhaktisiddhanta was rolling cigarettes for all the workers. Because they, that's what they do, they smoke. Keep them enthused. So, that's meant for experts to evaluate these things. But sometimes you have to make sacrifice.
Sometimes the mission matters more.
Yeah. Although Prabhupada said the highest service is to save yourself. But there are exceptions, circumstances, emergencies. And Prabhupada said, you have to know what your capacity is. So maybe you can do it, maybe I can't. And I can't imitate you. But at least it's preserving your Krishna consciousness is always ideally important. I think Prabhupada was not afraid that they wouldn't preserve their Krishna consciousness. I think he was more afraid that they wouldn't preserve it if they didn't do it. Because when your guru wants you to do something, then you better do it.
So true, so true. Bringing it back to the topic of prayer, I want to know a bit more about yourself. In the sense that you've obviously had a long journey with Krishna consciousness. How has your approach to prayer changed over the years?
I don't think it has. Want to hear something funny?
Okay.
Oh, this is so funny. I have a book that I have a notebook, and I started writing this notebook in 1972. I'd been a devotee 2 years ago, in 1971, and I'd write my realizations. So once some devotees were in my office and they were like looking at this book, they go, what is that book? I go, well, that's my realizations from like 1972 to 1974. And they open it and they say, could we look at it? And I said, yeah, read something to me. And they start reading and I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly what I'm preaching today, the same thing. It was so funny. And I was looking at that and I was thinking, how is that possible that when I'm 22, I'm saying the same thing that I'm saying when I'm 74? I'm 74 then. And I was thinking, this has to all be past life realization. There's no other explanation. That at 50 years of bhakti, I'm saying the same thing I said after 1 or 2 years. So I think for a lot of us, that when we came to bhakti, we were just continuing it, and so we actually didn't change that much. Maybe one of the things that has impacted me that I could share with you, that I think would help you a lot. I made a plan maybe 5 years ago that I wanted to take the verses of Shishastakam and sing them not only in Sanskrit, but sing them in English, so create songs. Every verse, one verse would have a song. And it was such an amazing experience, because when you put something to music, then it brings out the emotion that maybe wouldn't be there if you're just reading it. And at the same time, I was teaching the Shishastakam in japa retreats. And so this verse, this is the prayer. This is the prayer that has really, really touched me, if there was any change. The 5th verse of Shishastakam, O son of Nanda, somehow or other, I have fallen into this miserable ocean of repeated birth and death. Please pick me up and place me as an atom at your feet. And when I was singing it, writing it into a song and singing it, then I thought, this verse is exactly the mood we need when we pray, and specifically the mood we need when we chant. Because I've got myself in this ocean of material existence, of repeated birth and death, and I don't know how to get out. There's no way. And the only way to get out is if you pick me up. So then I came up with this analogy: you're in a well, and your guru throws you the rope, and you grab onto it and he pulls you up. And after I came up with an analogy, I heard Prabhupada give the same analogy. It's like, yes. Guru and I are one. So that's it. I've fallen, please pick me up. Okay, here's the rope, hold on to it, because otherwise I can't get out. So I think for me that kind of summarizes maybe the evolution of my prayer. It's like I'm in a situation where there's no way I can get myself out of material existence. All I can do is say, please pick me up and place me as an atom of your feet. That's all I can do. And only he can do it, I can't do it. And so the essence of prayer is that Krishna, it's basically the essence of prayer is, Krishna, help. I can't do this. That's it. And that's how we're meant to feel, and that's how a humble devotee feels. Like all the time, a humble devotee feels that way. So we went in a complete circle, right? We started there and we ended.
So true, so true. You mentioned that in that story that it was like the guru pulling you up from the well. What is the importance of guru, and why do we often have prayers to respect gurus before we even approach Krishna?
Krishna says, not exactly, but basically Krishna says, if you want to associate with me, you need to be pure. And in order to be pure, I will send you a guru, and he will purify you so that you're qualified to associate with me, and treat him like you would treat me. And so, because you can't approach me directly yet, do everything through him. Give it to him, he'll give it to you. Serve him, not service to me. And so Krishna says, if one says he's my devotee, he's not my devotee. But one who says he's a devotee of my devotee, he's my devotee. That's how it works. So, and then Mahaprabhu's, the more you're a servant of the servant of the servant of the servant, the closer you are to Krishna. Paradox, right? And the aspiration of the pure devotees is to be a piece of dust at the feet of his guru. Insignificant. And the aspiration of material consciousness is to be a mountain on top of everybody, controlling everybody. Right? Some of you know this story, but I will say it because I think a lot of you don't. And it's such a funny story and so instructive. Would you like to hear another story?
Yeah.
Tell the person next to you, I want to hear this story.
I want to hear another story.
I'm just trying to wake you up. It's a funny story, but it's unscripted. So, the devotees were saying, I don't know, I don't remember if the devotees were saying or Prabhupada was saying, what's the difference between me and you? And Prabhupada said, the difference between me and you is I never forget Krishna, but you do. So the next day, Prabhupada was offering prayers to the deities, and his servant, who was there the night before when they had this conversation, asked him later after the class, he said, Prabhupada, I saw that you were praying to the deities. No, Prabhupada said, first he said, the difference between me and you is you can fall down, I cannot fall down. That was it. Prabhupada, what's the difference between me and you? Or Prabhupada asked him, I cannot fall down, but you can. So then, Prabhupada's praying to the deities, his servant says, the next day he says, well, what were you praying for? And he said, I was praying to Krishna that I cannot fall down. He said, but Prabhupada, you said last night that the difference between you and us is that you cannot fall down and we can. And Prabhupada said, yes, because I prayed to the deities that I can't fall down, I can't. So that's the mood of prayer, that I, Krishna, you do everything. And all I can do is ask for help. Decide. And when Krishna sees what you want, he reciprocates. Yes?
So in a practical sense, how can we really intertwine prayer into our daily lives? How do we keep it at the forefront of our lives?
The more you aspire to go up, the more you're going to pray. The more difficult your goals are, the more you'll need to pray. The more you challenge yourself, the more you'll need to pray. If you're just like, whatever, then what's to pray for? Because whatever's okay. Prabhu! All right. I'm chanting my rounds. The only prayer I have is I don't fall asleep out of boredom. So then, but if I want love of Krishna, and that's my goal, then Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, because that is a high goal, and I'm totally unqualified for it. So then my prayers are more intense. So the higher you set the bar, the more you have to pray for. Don't you think I was praying like crazy when they put me in charge of that temple? 20 years old, like totally spaced out 20-year-olds running a temple for Prabhupada. And every night I told all the devotees, pray that Krishna sends devotees to this temple. And he sent so many devotees from our prayer. Because I feel incapable. So as your aspirations go higher, your prayers will have to go higher. If you have no high aspirations, what's there to pray for? Right? Just do it yourself. I don't need Krishna's help. Right? Yes? Okay, good.
Do we have much time left, or
Sure.
should we just take a couple of questions?
Oh yeah, questions. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, we done.
We have
That's
a
okay.
ready to go. So Mike is coming. Krishna, Krishna. See, that's Radha Raman. You guys look like brothers.
Down there.
Yeah. He's the older brother. I can't do it.
Hi, Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and your wisdom. I know you're very, very expert in matters of self-care and psychology and counselling. And so, just on a very practical note, could you please give us some systems and recommendations for how to tolerate? Because it's a very easy word
Right,
to
yeah.
throw out there, but
Yeah.
I've experienced as someone who counsels that if we suppress our feelings, then actually it's very, very detrimental, not just to us, but to those
Yeah,
around.
Well, I think there's a difference between feeling your emotions and acting on them. And we want to make that distinction, and I think a lot of people will try to suppress because they're afraid if they feel the emotion, that means they're going to act on it. Whereas emotions contain knowledge, and if you don't allow yourself to experience them, then you miss out on the information they're giving. And I'll give an example, and maybe it'll illustrate this. Let's say I have envy. Let's say I envy, whatever, I envy some devotee. And I know envy is bad, so I will try to suppress that emotion in the same way that I would suppress a sensual desire that is bad for me. I'm just like, I don't want to go with it. But if I go with the feeling of envy, it can educate me and I can look at myself and say, like, why are you so envious of this person? Because now I'm facing it and I'm willing to have this conversation with myself. Why are you so envious? This person is very nice, they're very successful. Why aren't you appreciating it? They're having the success that you would like to have. What good is it for you to be negative about the very thing that you want to achieve? And so the emotion carries this information that can work you through it, and it doesn't mean by facing it you're going to become more envious. It means you're going to work through it. But most of us think by facing it means we're going to act on the envy. I tell the brahmacharis the same thing. I said, if you feel lust, you should allow yourself to feel the emotion, feel the feeling of the lust without feeling lust. They're two different things. Like, what does the lust feel like as opposed to feeling the lust? So what do you feel like when you're lusty? Well, how does that feel? I'm a brahmachari and I feel lusty. How does that feel? It feels like I'm a hypocrite, a cheater. I'm dressed in saffron and I'm lusting after a woman. And you allow yourself to feel those things, and it purifies you because you feel so bad, and it doesn't make you more lusty, it makes you less lusty because you're allowing the emotion to educate you. So it's not necessarily that we need to suppress, it's usually we need to face in the right way so we can work through it. Or let's say I can't tolerate something, just, okay, go with it. Where is it going to take you? Don't bang walls and punch people, but go with it, how it makes you feel and why and what is it. Because there's something underneath, right? A lot of times when you can't tolerate something in another person, it's because you can't tolerate it in yourself, but you don't recognize it. And if you go through the process and start questioning, why can't I tolerate this? Is it because I do the same thing? It's honesty like that. So that's, I think the main point is don't hide from the emotion, but don't let the emotion control you, your actions, especially when you don't want to act that way. And then a lot of people say, that's not easy. Okay, it's not easy. But a lot of that has to be practiced when you're not in the situation. So that when you're in a situation that's difficult, you have strength to deal with it. The question I always ask, I ask devotees, well, if you can't tolerate something, look at the ramifications of not tolerating it, and look at the ramifications of tolerating it. And usually the ramifications of not tolerating are much worse than whatever struggle it requires to tolerate. And plus, once you tolerate it, you'll feel really good about yourself. And if you don't, you feel really bad about yourself. And that just weakens you the next time. It's kind of like, I couldn't do it last time, who's to say I can do it again? I just can't tolerate this. But when we speak about tolerance, sometimes we tolerate things that are bad for us. And we shouldn't do that either. So we shouldn't feel guilty if we can't tolerate something that's bad for us. So, did that answer your question, or you want to say something about that?
No, it does. I think what I'm understanding you to be saying is that the essence is to acknowledge our feelings and dig a bit deeper to understand what am I actually feeling and why am I feeling it, and to, instead of be controlled by those feelings or suppress them, go with it basically.
Like maybe the best example and the easiest example to understand is the feeling of guilt. So if you go with, who wants to feel guilty? We always are going to suppress it. This is such a painful and uncomfortable feeling. But if you go with the guilt, what all the guilt is saying is that you're thinking or doing something that goes against what you believe. That's basically all it is. Otherwise, why would you feel guilty? If you thought or did something that was in line with your values, you wouldn't feel guilty. You would feel good. So when you go with the guilt or the shame, like, why am I ashamed of this? What's going on? Where's that coming from? Well, because my parents always made me ashamed when I did this. Maybe that's where it's coming from. But you allow yourself to explore that by facing it, and you won't generally have those realizations if you run away from it. And even if you run away from it, it'll run behind you. Right? Suppress it. Suppressing it doesn't make it go away. It just hides it from you. Conscious awareness for a while.
So it's recommended practically that devotees seek help with these kind of difficulties?
Sometimes it depends, if they can't resolve it on their own, My understanding is that anything that helps you in your Krishna consciousness is Krishna conscious, even if it doesn't look like it externally. Because it's easy to say that's not Krishna conscious because it's not in the book. But if it's helping you, then it is Krishna conscious. Because that's the principle of surrender. Surrender is what brings you closer to Krishna. If it brings you closer to Krishna, then it's surrender. I think that's extremely important for everyone to understand. Otherwise you could carry a problem that you can't resolve because you think, I should just resolve it on my own. But if you can't, then it's hurting you. And the paradox is, sometimes you have a personal problem, personal issue, and it's affecting your relationships, it's affecting your sadhana. So the things that would heal it, you can't do properly because the problem is there. So it's a paradox. I'll chant to get rid of the problem, but I can't chant properly because of the problem. I'll go exercise on the treadmill to cure my knee problem, but I can't because the knee hurts. So I have to address the knee before I can do the treadmill. Hare Krishna. Someone in the back has their hand up. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for your lovely talk. My question is that there's so many people in this world are suffering through like depression and mental health battles from young age. When you speak to devotees, not everybody's going to understand each other. There's been many times where devotees have said to me that, oh, I'm not your best friend, why are you talking to me? Oh, go away, leave me alone. Why is it that these things happen in life? Because Swamis and Srila Prabhupada said that devotees has to be with each other to help each other and support each other. So I have faced this many times and it makes me look like a small person at times because I've been hurting for years for what I'm trying to do in this world.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying you're asking why devotees are not sympathetic to your being open to them?
Yes, or to each other, yes.
I can't speak for everyone, but it could be what I was addressing before, that they might feel like, well, just be Krishna conscious and you'll solve it, and they just feel like you're complaining or it's a cop-out because you should have resolved it through chanting or whatever. It could be that they have similar problems and they can't bear to hear it. Could be. And they may not even be conscious of that as to why they don't want to hear it. And it could be by nature that they're just not ready to hear it. So what I would suggest is you don't need a lot of people, you just need one. One you can trust that can hear it is enough. And many devotees have made the mistake of trying to open up to someone who's not that one person, who can't hear or can't keep it confidential or can't something or other. So I think, we should take responsibility also for who we choose to open up to. you know, because the word devotee, it's like there's an expectation that devotee should be a certain way. But that's not true, because we're practicing. So just because we wear tilak and dhoti kurta, doesn't mean we're going to always act like a good devotee, because, so we make that expectation, like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you sympathetic or compassionate? Because we're conditioned souls trying to become devotees, so you have to choose. And some people come into the world more compassionate than others, even though they're not devotees, they're good listeners, and they feel your pain and so forth. And so once you recognize that, then you can choose more wisely. You know, there's a program called the 12-Step Program. They have a Krishna conscious version called the Bhakti Recovery Group. And I know many devotees who attend these programs, and they say, you know, it's so honest. They're so open and honest with one another that we really need to be that way. But they have rules, they have standards, you know, so that everyone can listen to one another without judgment, and you feel secure in opening up, and no one will not listen. So, you know, you can join that group also. They have 11 or 8, they have 18 online groups every week, I think. Bhakti Recovery Group. Something to consider. Yes?
Can I ask one final question?
Yes?
My question is that often we see devotees, rather than going straight to the main altar in the temple, they go to the back of the temple and they offer their obeisances to Prabhupada first. So can you explain that practice? Why do devotees do that?
And as I was saying before, you go through the spiritual master to Krishna. At one time, Prabhupada said that if you are offering arti, and not that we do this, is if your spiritual master walked into the temple, you could stop the offering and greet him. So everything goes through the spiritual master to Krishna. So we start first with the spiritual master and work our way up. Like, we pay obeisances to our spiritual master before we speak, before we chant, before we read. Everything is going through him, and then it's kind of like it qualifies us. But sometimes you have two places, two holy dhams, holy tirthas in India. One is Mayapur, which is Lord Chaitanya's place, and one is Vrindavan, which is Krishna's place. And Lord Chaitanya, he's very merciful. He accepts everyone in any condition. And Krishna is more strict. So it said, first go to Mayapur to get your visa to Vrindavan. So it's something like that. First go where the mercy is greatest. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada. Thank you. I have some presents for you over here. I've written some books that can help you a lot. And so before you go, take a look, and I think you'll appreciate them. They're about practically applying bhakti. And, in ways, I've tried to write them in ways that other books are not written. We have affirmation cards for japa that are on this poster. Yeah, you come over here. He will talk to you. He'll convince you to take everything. Be careful if you get near him. We're gonna have the kirtan now, is that correct? We'll have a little kirtan, but if you have to leave early, please take a look, see what we have. We also have t-shirts and this.
Oh yeah.
And these it helps support my preaching work that I do.
You guys ready? If you fight with your husband or your partner, next time say, you know what, you are full of. That's it, kind of. But it's actually a spiritual world because
You are full of shit.
shit.
Did you know that?
So you can purify your emotions even if you're full of anger.
It's in Sanskrit. It's chinmaya. You're full of shit.
Sounds really, it's not like
Turn to the person next to you and tell them, you know, you're full of shit.
just knowledge. Like I said, it's knowledge.
True. And we have another shirt. I don't know if we have it here. It says, you are a piece of shit. Right? In Sanskrit, that is chit prana. Prana means a particle. Little drop, chit. You are a piece of shit. Prabhu. You're the biggest piece of shit I've ever seen. Okay, let's do this little kirtan.